Yeah. Well, okay, but that's that's like. Did you say the bottom line's a shot? That is not a. I have a hard time believing that's a shot. Whatever, I'm up to fighting. I'll sip.
Sip. You love tarantula.
Well,
Chug it.
let's. Love is might be a little strong of a word.
All right.
I love
The feeling.
lasagna. I don't. I love beer. That's right.
Cheers to 2 years worth of work. Getting Mr. Hansen on the show.
Yes.
I'm retired as of December 31st.
Tired of what?
Passing the torch.
To what? No, you're not.
Yep, it's your turn to book guess.
Okay, well then it's your turn
The
to have
host?
to ask all the questions.
Oh, shit. Okay, I'll keep booking guess.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
This is the AT Banter Podcast, a balanced and entertaining look at assistive technology, accessibility, and its importance in people's lives. Join Rob Minot, Ryan Fleury, and Steve Barclay as they banter with people around the world about anything and everything regarding assistive technology and the disability community. Now, on with the show.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT Banter.
Banter, banter.
Banter, banter.
Wow, look at all the banters, all the bantering going on. Yeah, you
Cowbells
can
and
tell
jingle bells.
energy is high today. Why is that, Ryan?
Because we're all high today now that marijuana is legal in Canada. We have yet. That would be a show. Let's all get
I was
really,
waiting. I knew
all
you'd
get-
come up with that
let's all
idea.
get really high.
There you go, the
That'd be
anniversary show this year.
Yeah, we'll invite Elon Musk.
That's right. We'll just see where things go. No, that's not correct. Why are we so excited, Ryan?
Because we are welcoming to the show, finally, Rick Hansen. We are very
Wait,
excited.
the Rick Hansen?
The Rick Hansen.
Surely not.
The guy that traveled the world in a wheelchair, raising funds.
34
for-
countries.
Yep.
How many miles?
40,000.
Yeah, I think that's right. 40,000, 34 countries. Went around the world in a wheelchair.
Yep.
Has got honorary degrees up the wazoo. He's
got a degree that's not honorary up the wizard.
That's right. He was the first person in a wheelchair that graduated with a physical education degree from the University of British Columbia.
Woo, woo.
What else?
What else? What else is there? He's a
He has his own day. He has his
multi-medal
own-
Yeah, that's right. He's got his
Paralympian.
own day. Like how many people
Okay.
can say that? He's got Rick Hansen Day.
That's true.
Which is, if we'd had more time with him, I would love to ask him whether or not he got to pick the day. Like when you get a day named after you, do you get to be like, yeah, I want to be February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day?
You could ask him.
Or do they just give you one? It's like, we've got May 28th open. How do you feel about that? And it's just like, okay, that's great.
Yep. Multi-medal Olympian, Paralympian
That's right.
Yeah.
in marathons.
He's done marathons. And you know, he has been an incredible advocate, of course, for accessibility and inclusive and universal design and inclusivity for well over 20 years. The foundation, he founded the Rick Hansen Foundation, which of course we'll be talking a lot about. But they're also involved in a lot of research for spinal cord injuries as well. So
Absolutely. And if you haven't watched him or know about him, check out the Rick Mercer report on YouTube because Rick went bungee jumping.
what?
Yep. Him and Rick went bungee
Really?
jumping. Yep.
I
Okay.
didn't say that.
You couldn't pay me.
So he really is a Canadian hero.
Absolutely.
And we are super excited and honored to be talking with him today. Still can't believe we got him on the podcast, to be honest.
It's not here yet.
How much money did he raise on that Man in Motion tour? Was it?
Is it
was
$25 million?
Yeah,
I
something
think?
like 25. It was a lot of money. A lot of money.
Over 2 years on the road in his wheelchair. That tour took, I think. It was like just over 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys live down here at the time? I mean,
I didn't.
I didn't, but
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't, Ryan? You
No,
were
I was
here?
in Alberta.
Okay, so Steve, did you see him at all while he was on his tour?
Not even once. No.
Because didn't he start? He started the tour here,
Yeah, he started here, finished it here.
right?
But everything that I saw of him, I saw on TV.
I see.
Yeah,
But the streets were lined with people when he did arrive.
yeah. I can't remember what was going on. Was I in school? What year was that?
He's March of '85. He started, and
Yeah. So when he started, I was in high school,
Mm-hmm. I was in junior high.
and when he finished, I would have been
in
probably
'87 he finished.
87. I would have been working.
Yeah.
I would have been working. Because 86, I was going to computer school.
Mm-hmm.
That was when Expo was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That was all kinds of fun. And so by 87, I was fixing photocopiers.
Right.
So there's definitely, we're going to link to a bunch of articles and accomplishments and footage of Rick Hansen, but definitely do a search on YouTube. He's done TED Talks, very motivational speaker, very, very encouraging guy to take a listen to.
Mm-hmm. And he's got his own song.
He's got his own theme song.
He does.
Yeah.
What
And it's not like me where I've got to do it myself.
Now is
just
the
walk
song-
around going, do, 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 do.
wait, now what is the song called? Is it called Man in Motion?
It's called St. Elmo's Fire, Man in Motion.
Right. Yeah, I must have got caught in some sort of a weird licensing thing where because it was written for Rick Hansen by John Parr, but
And
then
David
they
Foster.
attached it to that crappy movie
With Rob Lowe.
with Rob Lowe, so they must have had to like rename it St. Elmo's Fire because it really has nothing to do with the movie. I wonder how that all happened.
Well, it's got the line, I can see St. Elmo's fire burning in me, and I'm sure somebody in Hollywood went, St. Elmo's fire. Oh,
No,
there's-
you know what? I bet you they threw that line in just because it was like, well,
There is a YouTube video where John Parr and David Foster were in studio talking about this song, and Rick wheeled in. And I think that's kind of what gave John Parr the motivation to use that song for the tour, or Rick the motivation to use that song for the tour.
Yeah,
I forget how it went, but
see again, if this was a 2-hour podcast, I'd ask him about that. But
Yeah.
well, let's have to have him back.
I'd be curious to know whether or not he hates that song.
Is that your ringtone, Rick?
Yeah. Be like, I hate that effing song. Everywhere I go for the past 26 years,
They've been playing it.
I wheel in and what's playing?
I can't get it out of my head again for another week.
That's right. Flies into town to do
No,
a TED Talk, and they start playing that song.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I want to wheel in to Flash Pots and Thunderstruck, but no. No, it's oh my God, it's 2 minutes.
Open the room. Open the room. Open the room. He can't get through. He's going to leave.
Don't say anything that's going to embarrass anybody.
I don't think I'm capable of saying anything but things that will embarrass
Like,
somebody.
you want a filter on now?
You're going to have to build a filter.
Yeah, we've been incapable of coming up with any filters so far. So why would today be any different?
I bet she's in the room listening.
Yeah, really, right? That's what I would do.
Wondering why his people hook up with these idiots. I need new people.
That's right.
Yeah. There's going to be some firings at the Rick Hansen Foundation tonight.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, appreciate that, Don. And is this Rob?
No, this is Ryan, but I will introduce you to Rob.
Hi, Ryan. How are you?
I'm very well, Rick. So joining me in the room, I have Rob Minot.
Hello there.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Very good, thanks.
And we have Steve Barclay.
Hello there. I just want to make sure, is this the real Rick Hansen? We have a running
Depends on the day.
we have a running gag on our show because we actually thought we were going to have you on how long ago?
About 2 years ago.
About 2 years ago. Ryan had scheduled a Rick Hansen.
Rick Hansen.
It turned out to be entirely the wrong guy. He was an American clinical psychiatrist.
That's funny.
Yeah, so when I finally connected with Don and we were able to book you, I was tickled pink. So I'm just over the moon that you're able to join us today, Rick.
Oh, well, thanks for thinking of me, and really appreciate it. I love what you guys do, and it's an honor.
Well, the honor's all ours.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we understand you're driving right now?
Sort of off and on. Yeah, I'm just coming out of a high school presentation, and so I'm actually in a parking lot at the moment, waiting for rush hour in the parking lot to disappear, so I can basically make my move.
Well, perfect. See, if you're driving, we can just cross off the question where it's like, "What's your favorite curse word?" So that'll become apparent. Yeah. So during rush hour.
Yeah, if you hear a crash.
There may be a 20-minute pause while you exchange insurance information.
Well, listen, it's really tough to even know where to start because it's such a you've got such a rich past of being an advocate for accessibility, and of course that's what the podcast is all about. So when we were coming up with a list of questions, we really didn't even know where to start, but let's go way back. Let's start way at the beginning and talk a little bit about your accident and the immediate aftermath and how that sort of changed your attitude and how it kind of helped build the person that you are today with all these achievements under your belt.
When I was 15, it was 1973. I hate to say it was a long time ago, but I was a typical Canadian kid, and in many ways probably holding typical attitudes, Canadian attitudes about people with disabilities, which was largely back then fairly negative, fairly stereotypic, that if you had a disability, you were in trouble, and you wouldn't have much hope or possibilities to do much, and would probably, be pitied a lot. And so I carried that baggage when it was my turn, and when I had that fateful accident coming back from a fishing trip, and I was hitchhiking and got a ride in the back of a pickup truck with a driver who lost control, and the truck rolled, and it threw me back first against a big steel toolbox, broke my back, damaged my spinal cord, and before I knew it, the local doctor was telling me that I would never walk again. And for a young kid who was involved in the outdoors, every sport you can imagine, and my whole life revolved around physical activity and the use of my legs, that was almost unfathomable. It was almost like a death sentence. I thought that my whole life had been shattered along with my spine, and all my hopes and dreams seemed to have disappeared in that moment. And it was a really terrible period, and it was, obviously 4 months in hospital, 3 months in rehab, and then going back home to, try to think about moving from a dark canvas of no information and perspective of my new life to trying to gain certain, pinpricks of light and borders and textures and colors of hope. And that could only come not then in a world that didn't have the information age. It only could come through word of mouth and through, supportive family, healthcare providers, and then eventually role models who had been there for me. And probably the most powerful moment for me was to meet a role model who profoundly changed my life, and his name was Stan Strong. He was injured in the 30s when a tree fell on him as a policeman driving through Stanley Park.
Oh, geez.
And he was, and that class of, spinal injury back then, most people died. And that was right around the time they invented antibiotics and new medical treatment. And he actually survived, but he laughed at my 4 months and said it was, for him, it was 4 years, and chuckled because there were no rehab centers. And so he decided to keep moving forward, and he reached back to become a peer counselor and supporter, and encouraged a next generation of kids like me to not give up. And pretty much the biggest lesson from Stan was that, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with it. And there's a space between your ears that needs to be exercised, and it's largely about attitude and perspective, and that's sovereignty that you own. And all I saw with this guy was a positive attitude. He had a great smile. He lived a tough life, but he saw hope and beauty and meaning in every day. And I thought, God, if he can do it, so can I. And I want to be like him. And he had a powerful impact on my life.
That's fantastic. We see this in a lot of different disability groups, the importance of not just advocacy but mentorship. Mm-hmm. And we've had a couple of organizations on the podcast, like Blind Beginnings is one that we love because they provide mentorship opportunities for families with little kids who are blind and visually impaired. And that connection to be able to connect with somebody who has, a similar sort of condition, but a really positive attitude is just so incredibly empowering to people.
It really is. And then, of course, when you're able to then engage through common endeavor to forge a relationship, as I was with him, because he was also the team manager of our wheelchair basketball team, of a wheelchair basketball team called the Vancouver Cable Cars. And he ended up recruiting me and then eventually encouraged me to recruit others. And I recruited a guy named Terry Fox, and he just lost his leg to cancer. And we had this amazing dream team of great athletes, but also we had a mentor in Stan Strong who encouraged us to pay it forward. And that relationship, was a long-term relationship, and his character, and the integrity that he had was forged throughout the highs and lows, on the journey together, and deep respect for him.
So let me sort of switch over and talk a little bit about sports itself. Obviously, before the accident, you were a very active kid, but how large of a role did sports play after your accident, and how important did you find it to have a real passion for something to help deal with both healing and rehabilitation?
Well, I really felt that I was, an athlete. And so when my accident happened, and not being familiar with Paralympic or adapted sports, I thought that chapter was closed. And it was my physical education teacher and coach, former coach, when I was, he was my volleyball coach, and he made me realize that there was, adapted sports, but I still had a strong stigma about that it wasn't real sport, and wasn't really too keen when he sort of tried to encourage me to get involved. And in one of our conversations, he was a bit frustrated. He kind of sort of took a dictionary out, and because he had asked me why I wasn't interested. It's special, it's not the same, it's different, blah, 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 and came up with every excuse. And he finally opened the dictionary, and he said, so why don't you look up the definition of athlete? And so I did. And he says, so does it say anything about whether you can use your legs or not? And I kind of went, no. He went, well, you want to be an athlete? Then, hey, it's totally up to you. And, he made me realize that, that sort of limiting perspective was literally handicapping me from getting engaged in the things I love most, being able to set goals and maybe go as far as I could as an athlete and have a rich and meaningful experience in life as I'd always had and as I'd always dreamed of. And thanks to Bob Redford, my phys ed teacher and my coach, he shifted my paradigm. And then when Stan came along to recruit me into wheelchair basketball, I actually was able to readily accept it as an incredible offer. And then when I came to that team, I was blown away by the talent of the athletes. I mean, so it just verified exactly what Bob had been saying to me, which is that, it really is, it's just that you're transferring, from legs to the chair and using your arms. And these guys were doing circles around me. They were just incredible athletes, and made me realize I had a long way to go, and I wanted to be like them. And it was an amazing journey. and it really helped rebuild a sense of self-esteem and worth, and made me realize that I was actually able to be the athlete and the person that I always wanted to be, and I didn't need to be cured in order to be whole as a human being. And that was it was transformational in those early years, and then of course decided that I wanted to go as far as I could, and then decided to focus in on wheelchair track and marathoning, and extended for about a decade representing my country on the national team, and went to Paralympic Games and to World Championships, and ultimately to the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. And it was just an amazing experience. I feel so grateful.
I really think that adapted sports get short shift from the media. I have a good friend who was a blind downhill skier, and went to see her ski in Whistler, and there were a lot of other events that came down that hill, but the one that really impressed me were the what do they call them?
Sit skiers?
Sit skiers. Those guys are crazy. They're absolutely loons. And you would think that the media would show more interest in that that kind of stuff, because it's riveting. It's absolutely riveting when you see those guys, because they are just killing it, and they're going for it. They're going at 1,000 miles an hour, and when they wipe out, you're just terrified. It's better than NASCAR.
Yeah, like any other sport, and I think that's exactly right. And one of the challenges is that, again, we're sort of faced with stigmas, and sport is a powerful mirror for how society views itself, and it's kind of wonderful that that Paralympic Games exist, and and I've been a tremendous beneficiary of the games, and I think they do so much for the sport. But sometimes labels mean a lot, and you have to start to examine certain things and wonder anyway, and open the space for the conversation. If you had parallel Olympic Games for people of color, or of religion, or for women, how do you think that would go?
Yeah, fair comment. Yeah.
And so, but we have and readily accept parallel Olympic Games for people with disabilities. And what do you think that says really underneath it all? A couple of things. It says they don't belong in the real games. So we have to set up parallel ones. It says that they actually don't happen during the same time as the real Olympics. And as a matter of fact, we deploy all these media resources to cover all these amazing Olympic athletes, and then we get the sort of the second string, kind of special interest media to cover parallel Olympic Games and the athletes, and yet you're right, those athletes, not all of them, but most of them, and most of those sports are really elite and exceptional, and so they deserve to be promoted and highlighted at the level that they truly are, and yet they'll never really belong, no matter how hard you try, because the games are different. They're separate,
right?
And so I think we have to keep examining those models, and yet there are World Police and Fire Games, and there are World Highland Games, and
right.
World Gay Games and World Logger Games, and there's a lot of Olympic athletes in those games, but we don't really hear much about them because the focus is on the cultural difference, and that's the purpose of those games. And so perhaps there's tremendous roles and value in having World Disability Games, and cultural camaraderie and fellowship, or you see it in the Invictus Games for
right.
disabled veterans, and there's some incredible athletes there, but really it's about the the service and the price that these incredible, champions have paid, in support of their country and the world, and they get recognized through the vehicle of sport, and yet, but there's only one Olympic Games, and so therefore maybe we need to just keep rethinking those things. And symbols make a difference, and they matter. And if you don't, I'm not suggesting that you abolish Paralympic Games, but there's barriers that embed and entrench, with labels and structures that sometimes, maybe there's a way to bridge the Olympic and Paralympic Games with, some, a certain select group of events that kind of pave the way, or there's other options to consider to try to intensify the media approach so that maybe the coverage is magnified and overcome some of these, obstacles. But the conversation will lead openly to probably better solutions.
Yeah, I know from trying to follow different sports, oftentimes what you end up with is instead of having television coverage, you've got a internet feed somewhere from a venue that has a poorly placed camera and maybe somebody doing commentary, but yeah, there's no parity in the coverage, that's certain, and
well, yeah, exactly. And of course, what that does is then that just reinforces the stigma that it's not really great athletics because it's not covered like the real show is. And so,
yeah, which of course is wrong.
When you cover, whether it's whether it's flying goalball or whether it's quad rugby or wheelchair basketball or those downhill skiers. I mean, they and you cover it right, and you got the cameras, the angle, the lighting, the commentary. You focus on the actual athletes, and someone knows the sport. All of a sudden, you bring it to life, and people go, "Damn, that's cool!
Yes,
I want to see more."
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, we have to talk a little bit about the Man in Motion tour, and we were talking a little bit, before the mics came on about, because we all grew up in the '80s, and if you grew up in the '80s in Canada,
you heard about the tour.
Absolutely, it was in every household. So, could you walk us through a little bit of how it actually came about and what it kind of meant for you in terms of your own personal growth?
Yeah, I was really, really fortunate that my dream of wheeling around the world, it started as, in many ways, a fantasy in the rehab center, just wondering if I could actually do what I'd imagined before my accident, which is to bike around the world, and now do it in a wheelchair, maybe a trailer behind the chair, and my buddies would be in their bikes, and off we'd go. And it didn't seem possible when I'm struggling to go down the hall in the rehab center in the chair, and every push was an effort. But nevertheless, it was just an idea. And then I represented my country in wheelchair marathoning and physically realized that, yeah, I could probably do that. But there wasn't really a purpose in it. It was just something that would take a lot of time and didn't have the same romantic currency that it maybe did when I was younger. But I was inspired by Stan Strong to have a philosophy of paying it forward and making a difference. And I was inspired by my teammate and friend Terry Fox, and a guy who decided to try to run across the country to help cure cancer. And yet there was a secondary impact of his journey that he didn't intend, which is people were reframing the way they viewed people with disabilities. They actually saw ability in that journey. And so I thought, maybe if I wheeled around the world with a message to try to improve perceptions of people with disabilities, focus on ability, remove some of those stigmas and barriers that I'd had to wrestle with, and then I saw in the lives of many others, and as they focused on me and my Paralympic colleagues, and then maybe help remove barriers and liberate potential. Maybe even find a cure for spinal cord injury. And so that became the motivation. And all of a sudden, I started paying attention to this dream. But even then, didn't really think it was possible, because wheeling around the world in a wheelchair oh my gosh, the things that would be necessary to make that happen, in the 80s when the world was so large, disconnected, inaccessible, no technology to communicate really. So it really took a series of champions and potential sponsors to actually put it all together. And World Expo coming to Vancouver in the mid 80s, maybe they would be a sponsor. My good friend who was with Nike Canada, and of course my coach and and my buddies and my cousin, and all of a sudden there was a critical mass of potential supporters where I finally blurted it out. I'm going to wheel around the world, and that was the beginning of holy shit. What have I just said? What have I got myself into here? And how in the heck are we really going to make this happen? But by then I made a commitment, and we struggled for a year and a half to 2 years to put it all together. And when we left Oak Ridge, the very first day on March 21st of 85, we were underfunded, unorganized, and all hell was about to break loose, but we were going to give it a shot.
I was I live in Burnaby, just the shy of the Coquitlam border, and I went down Thermal Hill the other day, and I thought about you coming up that hill. I remember watching the news following you up that hill, and you just pounded up that hill. That trip was transformative for you, wasn't it? Because you left, and when you came back, you were a monster.
Well, it was swim or sink, and it was a good thing probably we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, because the mountain was pretty high, and it was a struggle, immense struggle every single day just to keep going, let alone to try to imagine and work with the team that I had to try to make a difference and try to get better every day, try to fix problems, try to see examples of success and how people were caring about the idea, the message, how it made a difference in the lives of a person with a disability, or money that might have been raised. And it really, it ultimately was a sense of providence, really, that emerged at key points where certain individuals or, moments of coincidence or whatever that ultimately kept things moving forward and moved them sequentially to different levels. Even in spite of the times when I wanted to quit, I would eventually get inspired or talk back off the limb and keep going. And then the last day when I went up Thermal Drive in Coquitlam, the hill was steep, but the momentum was so huge that it just literally sucked me up that hill and across the finish line. And it was like a dream had come true. I was living the dream, and it was amazing to raise $26 million to generate awareness and think that all that time and effort was worthwhile, because all the struggle, because I was surrounded by an amazing team, that people had made the difference at these key milestones, and that ultimately it was worth it. And then I was breaking through that finish line and at Welcome Home Rick, and above it there was a little sign that said, "The end is just the beginning." You can imagine how I thought at that point. Like, hey, we're done, man.
Easy for you to say,
I imagine your plan was to nap for about 5 days at that point.
Yeah, but in reality, it was true. The person was pretty clear on the future, that tour was over. Yeah, okay, you raised some money, created some awareness, but the world, really hadn't changed that much, and therefore, it was a baby step. If you kept, if you cared about the outcome, then maybe you should, maybe rethink going back to the Paralympic Games and regaining your world title, and maybe you should think about staying on the journey. And that was a pretty transformational period after the tour was over, to kind of reflect on that and realize that I'd been profoundly changed by the experience, seeing, obviously progress, but seeing, the magnitude of the challenge, listening to and meeting people with disabilities, and seeing the obstacles and also the possibilities. And so I decided to stay engaged, and gave up my athletic career and kept moving forward.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the founding of the Rick Hansen Foundation, and tell us a little bit about what its mandate is.
Yeah, well, we had generated a fund, and we had a responsibility to manage that fund and also make sure that it was dispersed across Canada, because the funds were raised in Canada towards the end of our tour, and then also start to think about, we established a foundation to be able to handle that mandate and responsibility. A board of directors, as a volunteer, I made sure that was set up, and I felt confident that that they could do that. But after 10 years, to continue to support spinal cord research and accessibility for people with disabilities, most people criticize me from a business point of view that hey, can't you just focus on one dream? You have to focus on two things that are like massive. And I'm going like, but I from an authentic place, I started. That was my vision. I believe that one day there will be a cure for spinal injury, and that the next generation of people with spinal injury will walk again and will have full recovery, and is possible. But I also believe that in the meantime, there's so many people who happen to have a disability that really have ability, and that the barriers that exist are limiting them from being full and contributing citizens, and ultimately, I care about that as well. And therefore, I'm going to try to deal with both. And after 10 years, we decided to reevaluate the success of the foundation. And, I'd since established myself as a leader through a fellow position at the University of British Columbia in accessibility, and we looked at the foundation, and it had been distributing interest out to a lot of worthy causes, but $26 million, with interest rates dropping and the needs moving forward, we were actually measuring our success based on dollars out in activity versus outcome, and we really weren't getting scale. Our the legacy of the tour was starting to dissipate, and I wasn't really, because I was busy doing my thing, I wasn't really collaborating with the foundation, and we decided to form a strategy after 10 years that if we're going to really care about those two dreams, we're going to have to realize that we need to get more focused, more strategic, and converge our energy into some big milestone efforts and move the bar. And so we upped our game, and I collaborated formally from my position at UBC with the foundation, as did the university, and we decided to really put a focus on, not abandon accessibility, but put a focus on spinal cord research for a while, and looked at where the barriers were. And the first barrier was that it was on the corner of everybody's desk, and we needed a global spinal cord research center in Vancouver, right where the clinicians were, that would house 300 of the best researchers and clinicians, and then make it a strategic focus rather than a fragmented discipline that was behind the door for almost every opportunity. And so we did that, and we put together about $20 million worth of endowments to help support researchers, and then engaged to bring in tens of millions of dollars of support to connect a network across the country, which then became the Rick Hansen Institute, which was a global network that harmonized language, measured the same things, got everybody to share and to collaborate. And now, all these years later, the institute is arm's length, separate board of directors, CEO, unifying in places like China, Israel, Australia, India, the States, Europe, and they're actually accelerating progress because of that innovation. And I'm happy about the work that they're doing, and as founder, still involved in supporting them. But I've turned my attention, and the foundation has, to really go after the accessibility agenda. And there's so many big barriers out there, but we decided to tackle the built environment and really try to standardize the built environment and to move it out of the hands of just the advocates and put together a professionally accredited curriculum that people could get a designation if they were trained, and let architects, engineers, city planners, the people in real estate and advocates all end up with the designate, and they could rate buildings. They could see if they're accessibility certified or accessibility certified gold, and keep innovation going so that we don't get stale on an old standard, and eventually make it globally relevant. And so that's as founder and CEO of Rick Hansen Foundation, that's the other side of the equation. And we want to really go deep on that barrier and break through. We recognize there are many other barriers out there that need to be attacked, but we want to use that same model we use with the spinal cord research strategy, which is to sort of create a common language, common measurement framework, and then get engagement from many other sectors other than the disabled community, where governments and private sector could really get behind what we're doing and accelerate progress and get there faster. So that's kind of where we're at today. And I'm coming up to my 62nd birthday next year, and looking forward to elevating to founder of both the institute and the foundation, and still playing a role on those two big dreams where I can add value. Hopefully till the day I die, because I've always been deeply ingrained in my DNA, and I'm sure that I'll also be a source of new ideas and innovation to challenge both of those entities and others to think out of the box, because that's kind of what drives me.
So let me ask you a little bit about some of the programs, because I know that both you and the foundation work a lot with schools and with young people. What's the message that you bring to them?
Well, we decided quite a while ago. I always wanted to be a teacher, and graduated from UBC in physical education, and was on that track to be a coach as well, and clearly got distracted with the tour and the bigger agenda. But I've always believed that that education and youth are the key to a multi-generational journey, an ultra marathon of social change. And we wanted to embed a school program that would start here in Canada, maybe eventually be a global program, and help be a resource for teachers to help use the metaphor of not just our tour or my journey, but more importantly, the message of accessibility and inclusivity to be a metaphor for integrating curriculum lessons and outcomes, and how could youth be inspired and educated to be open-minded, to be inclusive, to not leave anyone behind, to remove barriers and be barrier busters. And so we have a school program that's in every province and territory. We're not in every school yet. We're going to continue to strive to do that and have it be normalized, but to build a sense of social justice and inclusivity, and get youth to look at their schools or look at their communities and have the inspiration to get out there and identify and remove barriers and work with us and others to do so. We have ambassadors that from all walks of life and all kinds of people who have disabilities that show ability to come in and tell their story. To many of them are students themselves, and to turn the table on the equation, to show ability and to be a rally cry for folks to see and spot the barriers and stay on the game and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider that the kids who are in school now, I mean, those are the builders of tomorrow. Those are the politicians of tomorrow. So the less of a mystery or a stigma that they see disability as is only going to benefit.
Absolutely. And of course, it's the living community. Canadian schools are truly that. And you'd be shocked at how many schools still in Canada, though, today are not accessible. Or if they are, you can get into maybe a classroom, but can you get up onto the stage to be part of drama? And why is it that we hire able-bodied actors and actresses to play great roles and win Academy Awards?
Yeah.
I mean, why is that? Well, if we're not including kids in drama, they're not being inspired, to think that they can be a tremendous actor and not just be typecast in a disability role. Well, then, it's not often you see really cool movie or series like Glee out there that just showed the kid in the chair as being one of the buds, and he was a dancer and a cool dude, and it wasn't a big deal. So these are super important outcomes that I think are important, and you just have to look around, and it might be the lunchroom. Well, if the lunchroom in a school is not accessible, how can you hire a teacher with a disability?
Right. Yeah.
Or the portable isn't accessible. Oh, well, then you have to go to a different class. You can't follow your class. Or the playground. Yeah, like that means the kid can't get out there, or a teacher, or a parent, or a grandparent. And that doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of these things. And you don't have to go too far to go just across the street to look at the ball diamond. And, you can't get into the dugout. If you're a coach or an umpire, you can't even get into the field of play. And so how can you be included? Or if you're a hockey player, or you were a hockey player and now you're a coach and you have a disability, but you can't get behind the bench. Or if you're a media journalist, and can you get into, the media box, in a big arena or a multi-major sporting complex. I mean, these are shocking realities that still exist in today's society, and we haven't formalized the concept of accessibility and inclusion, and we also haven't sort of normalized the design process and the culture,
right,
and the expectation that it's not just getting in and out of the door and going to the washroom and being a passive participant. It's actually being a full participant and a contributor to the economy, to culture, and to society. And that's a new model of inclusion that that emerged beyond the 80s and the 90s, and it's today's expectation, but the gap from that expectation to reality is still pretty big. So we've got to figure out how to bust through and create these big breakthroughs in some areas that most people with disabilities in, and rising tides float all boats.
And those examples you gave about getting behind the bench or into the dugout of a ball diamond are all obvious examples that, I'm totally blind and never even really thought about. So are we making headway?
We are, and that's one of the things we are, but we're not accelerating. We're not hitting at or above our weight. And one of the biggest reasons is that people with, the disabled community, like when you ask Canadians, how many people with disabilities are there in Canada? They'll go, well, I don't know, maybe 1 million. They'll go, no, sorry, 4 million,
Yeah.
1 in 7, and that's adults. And what? I don't see that.
And that's only if you don't include certain intellectual disabilities, I believe, too.
Yeah, and so then you go into well, what's behind that is because everything's fragmented on clinical diagnosis, body part, disease orientation, or whatever point in the continuum from being in the hospital or somewhere into the community that you care about. And everything's fragmented and therefore underrepresented. And there are things that are visible, and there are many disabling conditions that aren't visible. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the symbols of accessibility that exist in today's world. And, well, tell me, what's the one symbol you see or about when you talk about accessibility in today's society? When you go up into a parking lot,
Yeah, it's that white, white wheelchair on a blue background.
Stick man in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, there you go. Back to symbols and
Right.
representation. Well, that represents maybe 30% of population, with disabilities, but not the whole. And as a matter of fact, if you have a placard, which has to be a stick man in a wheelchair,
Mm-hmm.
and now you step out of your car and you walk into the
Yep.
shop, you're getting cussed out by somebody,
Yep.
because you're not in a wheelchair, but you need it. And so kind of probably speaks to the need to redesign fundamentally our symbol of accessibility for all.
Right.
Not a stick man in a wheelchair, not even a person in a wheelchair, maybe leaning forward and being in motion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a person in motion, a human being in motion, where you can't really define what the disability is much, but it's a form. It's our swoosh, right? And because that way everybody can see themselves in it, and it's really not about the disability. It's about removing the barrier so everybody can be in motion and fully contribute.
All right, Rob, there's your next graphics project.
And absolutely, and it should be a design challenge, and somebody should recommend that to the UN and to the global community, and then we should have rites of passage to rebrand every modification that represents
Mm-hmm.
being inclusive to that entity, and it should sort of reflect the next generation of our attitudes and expectations. That you think about maybe the idea of time lapsing a wheelchair symbol in a parking lot and having the traditional stigma of the person in the wheelchair get out, and then there's the person who gets out, they're in a walker or cane, and there's a person who gets out and they're in the passenger seat, and they've got they've got the guide dog or the cane, and they're blind, and then there's the mom with the baby in the stroller, and then there's there's someone else getting out, and bottom line is that that ramp that was beside the wheelchair spot, and then all of a sudden that wheelchair symbol kind of breaks up as in real time, and then it gets reformed into our swoosh, and ultimately it's accessibility for everyone. Accessible design is good for everyone. It's
Right.
good for workers, who are lifting heavy things, moms with strollers, and safer for workers and pedestrians, and just makes sense. But we tend to keep sort of fragmenting our field and our community, and I think that's why we're not hitting at or above our weight. The reality is there's over 1 billion people on the planet today, according to WHO, living with a disability. World's largest minority, and so let's opt in on the big barriers that can really kind of shake things up, make progress to break through, and be able to measure progress objectively in the form of like an index. So when someone says how accessible is your city, you not only can see that someone has a plan, but they actually can measure it, and they can tell you because they figured out how to measure it, and it's relevant to other cities across Canada and around the world.
Let me ask you this, though. Does it surprise you that Canada is still missing a comprehensive national disability legislation like the ADA? And what are your thoughts on the proposed Accessible Canada Act?
Yeah, it does surprise me because Canada was probably one of the only countries in the world that, in its constitution and charter, stated when we brought it home in '82 that this young country was going to be built on, principles of, equality for people with disabilities and inclusion, and that was a powerful statement. And so you would expect that shortly after that would have been then, the translation into legislation, and then into a sense of enforcement, but maybe more importantly to move beyond that, so we didn't just focus on minimum requirements as a social safety net. And I think, again, largely because we never laddered up to really have enough force to make it feel like it was more than words. Back then, largely, disability was considered to be almost like a charity, and so the idea of human rights was relatively big, and the leverage didn't translate. And so, other countries broke through and went ahead, maybe not in their constitution, but ADA and the Americans with Disabilities Act were returning veterans from the States, joining from Vietnam, joining, champions and advocates for the disabled, and they pushed through and they put together ADA, and that was then, implemented, and a lot of progress happened. A lot of litigation, a lot of confrontation, a lot of legal activity, but progress nevertheless happened. A lot of exemptions, a lot of, maybe old models, of access back in the 70s and 80s when it was formed, and then early 90s when it was implemented. So there's been a lot of renewed thinking since then, but maybe they have to now go back because a lot of people think they're there in the States, but they're really just beginning. And so other countries are also breaking through. So Canada is catching up. We're also very fragmented jurisdictionally. Federal jurisdiction doesn't apply to everything provincial, and nor does it at municipal or Indigenous levels. So we have to think about harmonized solutions where, even though you have a different jurisdiction, you can think about a standard that makes sense all across the country, and maybe, heaven forbid, maybe a global standard that, people, metrics, businesses, governments wanting to, kind of coordinate, share knowledge and information ought to be there. So I think we're actually even though we're late to the party, we have provinces like, Ontario who built something, Manitoba, and now Nova Scotia. And the federal government has implemented their legislation, tabled it, I should say, after consultation. And there'll be probably tweaks on all sides. The disabled community will have issues or do have issues, and business, private sector will probably have concerns. But at the end of the day, it'll be approved by hopefully the early new year at the latest, and we'll start executing and going forward. And what really counts is that they're not just another set of words, because if you ask people in Ontario, they probably will say that, over a decade ago, there were lots of great words in the legislation, but maybe they didn't feel that there's been as much traction as should have happened. And now they're really sort of worried and trying to push enforcement. But I think enforcement and accountability is important and has to happen. But boy, what really counts is that we get people to and above the line and beyond the line faster. So, we've got to also incent and inspire and enable people to get there faster. And I think that prevents static statements, that will be embodied by today's standards being tomorrow's handicap. Our expectations today are very different than they were in the 80s, and they'll be very different in another 10 years. And so, but we just got to get moving and move to the line and beyond. And so I think it's going to be a really positive thing. The current government, really should be applauded for, making the statement. Right. They really are the first to make the statement that they're going to do it. They've consulted, they've tabled something, albeit not perfect. It'll shape again, and then it'll be approved, and we can get moving forward and go beyond it.
Knock on wood.
Exciting times.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, listen, we should probably start to wrap up. I mean, I don't know, as sort of fellow advocates for the idea of inclusion and universal design and accessibility, I mean, I'd like to, personally thank you and the foundation for all the work that you've done over the years, and I'm sure, we'll continue to do.
Well, thank you. And we're trying hard. We're learning. We make mistakes, but we also, keep trying to set the bar higher. And at the end of the day, we just hope that, whether it's whether it's in British Columbia, whether it's the federal government, whether it's any other province, territory, municipality, or Indigenous community, we can all start to harmonize on a common standard that we think's good enough right now to get going. And then we can all upgrade together and every 3 to 5 years keep up in the bar together, as opposed to fragment the hell out of the country even further, and then having so many different interpretations of accessibility that we don't even know what we're talking about, and the people we're targeting are so confused they don't move because they're afraid. And that's got to change. We got to put the power into the rest of the community, so they're trained, accredited, and then get a common rating and certification process where we can recognize people who are at or hopefully beyond the line and say that's the Canada we want. And there's lots of progress out there, and let's start focusing on a lot of these great successes rather than trying to beat people up. I think we can take the high ground and let others deal with the enforcement.
Yep, we absolutely can.
Well, thanks you guys, and I really appreciate what you're doing, because you're spreading the word, and the more people that prevent negative attitudes and also inspire people to alternative solutions and great stories of hope and inspiration. You guys keep moving the bar, and so I really appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you very much, and it was a pleasure to speak with you today.
Yeah. Oh, one thing before I let you go. My chiropractor, Scott Morrison, said to say hello to you. He apparently grew up with you in Williams Lake, and I guess his brother dated your sister or something.
That's great. So such a cool thing that I've been this isn't an endorsement for chiros, but I'll tell you what, I've been seeing a chiro for 40 years, and guys like Scott, they've saved my life many times as far as changing from a pain and suffering point of view to feeling like you're able to keep moving forward. So tell him I said to say a big hi, and keep doing great work.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay,
all right,
care.
sir. Thanks.
Right, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. Bye now.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care.
Well, there you go, Ryan.
There you go. That was a great interview.
It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like he speaks publicly for a living.
Almost.
Yeah. Yep.
Not only that, I mean, honestly, the guy's been tireless in the work that he's done.
I don't think he sleeps. I really don't think he sleeps. I think he slept.
When you
he probably
think of
does.
it all. But he's so right about, the idea of universal design. I mean, I feel like lay people, look at government buildings, they look at wheelchair ramps, and they go, yeah, we've come a long way. Well, we've got Braille on the elevators, we've got some ramps. Like, we're good.
Unless you're Trump Tower.
For years, those have been the bars, right?
Yeah.
It's like, can somebody get through the front door, and can somebody blind operate the elevator? And that's
that's it.
And maybe if you're lucky, a wheelchair accessible washroom.
Yeah.
But even the washrooms that are designated as wheelchair accessible oftentimes are not functional for people in something like a power chair.
Right.
I go places with my buddy Darren. He's in a power chair. And they've got a wheelchair accessible washroom, but he can't actually turn his chair around in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of important.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and like Rick was saying, even just getting up onto a stage in a school
Rick,
auditorium.
You're on a first name basis.
That's right.
That's Mr. Hansen.
That's right. Yeah. Mr. Hansen. There you go.
I didn't see you calling him Rick when he was here. Now he's Rick all of a sudden.
I'll give him a call Friday night. We'll go for beer. But he's so right. Like, we don't even think about school auditoriums.
Yeah.
We don't even think about lunchrooms. We don't even think about the baseball diamond dugouts.
Yeah. Well, when he was talking about that, I was thinking back to my high school, and I never saw a kid in a wheelchair in my high school. Not once.
We did, but they had special classrooms. They weren't integrated.
Right. And in ours, we had a blind girl in our school. But yeah, nobody in a wheelchair, and they wouldn't have been able to navigate the school because we had, you walk in the front door. There was there were stairs up to the front door.
Right.
I don't think there was a wheelchair ramp. There was a ground level entrance, but I think it was at the gym. And then I don't think you could really go anywhere from there other than across the gym.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, the real frustrating part about it is, I'm sure, is that, it's the notion, it's universal design itself really needs to be attached to a mindset way early, like at the design.
Oh, yeah.
When that architect is coming up with the blueprints, that's where universal design needs to be implemented.
Yeah.
This idea that accessibility is just something that you tack on to something.
Yeah, it can't be a retrofit.
Yeah,
No.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen time and time again that just doesn't work. That's the least. I mean, it's something, but it's far from the ideal. So the key is you've got to get the sense of universal design and all the benefits behind universal design at the start, at that design process.
Well, we've talked about it in the past about just curb cuts and how that benefits everybody, women in with kids and strollers. It's not just, people in wheelchairs. It benefits everybody.
Listen, I'm not the only able-bodied person that's gone up a wheelchair ramp just because I've been too lazy to walk up the stairs.
Exactly.
Honestly, let's be totally honest. Done it lots.
Yep.
Yep. Accessibility benefits the lazy. There you go.
Everybody. It's everybody.
And I'm betting the statistics for lazy people are really high.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's just everybody's been too lazy to look them up.
You know what? But not only that, like what, I loved, and I forget who said it, but whoever it was, I sorry, I can't give you credit, but whoever it was that said basically, every person on the planet at some time in their life is going to need some sort of assistive technology or benefit from some sort of universal design. Sorry, I've had tequila. I've been
It's starting to slur.
Universal design, because whether it be you broke your leg and you're on crutches for 3 weeks. You know what? For 3 weeks, you have physical limitations. Welcome to the club.
Yep.
Everybody's going to be in that. So universal design is just benefits everybody.
It's Hockey Night in Canada, starring.
Thank God whoever that was didn't call during Rick. Well, look, now I'm calling him Rick. We're all buddies.
Yeah, we'll go for beers one Friday night or something. Reach out to him.
That's right. He's in town. Yeah. So. Whew. Well. Anyways.
He's at a loss of words now.
I know. Okay. Hey, Rod. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, who? What? Hey, Raw.
Sorry, I'm trying to get you.
What up, bro?
Trying to get you on another giggle.
Oh, I see.
Giggle rant.
No.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Where can people find us?
They can find us in my basement or at atbanter.com.
They can also email us if they so desire, atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
They can. Where can they find Canadian assistive technology?
No, we're not
Well,
even
wait
there
a
yet.
second.
Whoa,
We're not even
there yet.
close to that.
Oh, well,
No.
let's rewind.
Yeah.
Stop the clock.
Okay. No, we got to talk about where else you can find AT Banter, because you can also find AT Banter on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram.
That's correct.
But
What?
you can also find us on Spotify and TuneIn and Apple Music and Google Play Music. You can find us everywhere.
Wow. Which is why we can compile no statistics, because we got no idea how many people are listening at any given time.
Hey, what about Canadian assistive technology? Where can people find them if they are so inclined to?
Canadian assistive technology can be found online at www.canasstech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com.
Yeehaw.
Or you can phone us at 1-844-795-8324. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
795-832. Yeah, that's right.
Yes, we're very excited. We now offer accessible furniture.
That's right. We've
Really excited to
signed up with Populous Furniture to do the ADAS line of either, let's see, they've got peg raised, they've got crank raised, they've got motorized, they've got kitchen cabinets that raise and lower, sinks that raise and lower.
We got it all.
Oh yeah, they got all kinds of crazy stuff. And workbench. They got ergonomic workbenches.
Workstations,
Yeah.
tables, you name it.
They've got it all. And it's all customizable. You can get cable runs and power bars. And
Pretty colors.
pretty colors, yeah. Yeah, different tabletop finishes.
Probably speakers mounted into the top of the table.
They don't have that as an option, but, I could probably talk them into it.
Probably.
A table with Alexa built into it.
Yeah.
Hey, did you listen?
Or a virtual reality tabletop.
That's not that far away.
We keep dropping glasses through it. Damn it, I thought it was a real table again.
Hey, Alexa, pass the soul. The robotic hand. Anyways, okay. Where are we?
Digressing.
Hey,
We are
no,
digressing.
I know we're all just giddy after that interview. Where can people find Chaos Technical Services?
Well, our dear friend Rick Chant, who is shortly to return from Africa. Actually, but when this airs, he will have returned from Africa. He can be found at www.chaostechnicalservices.com. That's all one word, believe it or not. And you can email him at rick@chaostech.com.
Incorrect.
Incorrect.
Chaostech at
chaostech@shaw.ca. And you can also email him at chaostech@shaw.ca.
That's right. And if you got a piece of assistive technology that is broken or needs a new battery or just don't know worky,
Maybe a little polishing.
just give him a call. I don't know. Now that we're good buddies with Rick Hansen, we might have to. We have two Ricks in our lives.
Yeah.
issue.
I think I think Rick Chant is probably the one that's more in our lives.
Probably.
Rick Hansen we admire from afar.
For now.
Well, now that he knows how cool you are, right?
You think I'm done?
Now that you found him, you're going to become his stalker.
No. I won't do that to him.
Okay, I guess that's going to do it for us. I listened.
That's
I told
going to be
you guys not
that's
to give me
gonna
tequila.
Bleep,
that's
bleep,
gonna
bleep.
be
That's
do
all,
it for
folks.
us, yeah.
I've had like 4 sips and they've gone straight to my head. Hey,
Where can people find us?
No, I think we did that part.
Oh, Rob's snorting now.
All right,
Oh,
pull
God.
it
Okay,
together,
all right,
people. It's the Rick Hansen episode. Pull it together.
okay. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening in once again. We'll see everybody.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions across Canada. Find us online at www.canastech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com. Or call us toll free at 1-844-795-8324. For all your assistive technology servicing needs, call Chaos Technical Services at 778-847-6840 or find them online at chaostechnicalservices.com. Music provided by bensound.com.
Whoa, look at that. Master of the one take.